Hi everyone, it's Sam from the Danger Planet here, and today we're going to be talking about one of the new strategies in Gaining Grounds 4, plant explosives. So, last time we talked about raid the vaults. This time we're going to be talking about the other returning strategy in Gaining Grounds 4, plant explosives. Now, as I said before, Raid the Vaults is a slightly different version of Guard the Stash, which was a strategy from Gaining Grounds 3. Plant Explosives is returning from Gaining Grounds 0, actually, and I believe it's almost identical to the original one. There have just been some very minor cleanups. So the way Plant Explosives works is that after deployment, starting with the player with initiative, each player alternates placing explosive tokens, which we'll call bombs, on their deployed model until they've placed a total of 5. Remember, this is only on models that have deployed, so from the Shadows models are not eligible to get these tokens. Minions can have only 1 token on them. Non-minions can have a maximum of 2 tokens on them. Although, one of the changes in this version versus the plant explosives from GG0 is that you can go above this limit during the game, as we'll see. When you have an explosive token on you, a bomb, you can take the interact action to discard one of those tokens and drop a strategy marker into base contact with yourself. That's sort of the planting a bomb. And again, some differences between this version of plant explosives and the GG0 version. You have to be friendly controlled to do this, so you can't obey an enemy model to drop a bomb, and strategy markers can't be dropped within 6 inches of any other strategy marker, friendly or enemy. And you can't take this action if you could not legally drop the marker. So basically, when you're controlling a friendly model, take an interact action, discard your bomb token, drop a bomb on the board in the form of a strategy marker. Once bombs are on the board, a friendly controlled model can take the interact action if they're in base contact with them to basically pick them up. Discard the strategy marker, gain a bomb token. If a model who's carrying one of these markers is killed, an enemy model that is within 3 inches of the killed model, as long as the model is not summoned, can gain the tokens. That is, summoned models with summon upgrades cannot have bomb tokens, because remember, models with summon upgrades can never interact with a strategy marker, and they can't steal the bomb tokens by killing an enemy model that has them while they're within 3 inches. Basically, models with summon upgrades cannot have bomb tokens. And if there's nobody around to pick up the tokens, they're discarded. So how do you score? Well, at the end of each turn, you score 1 victory point. If there are more strategy markers on your opponent's table half, then you've earned victory points so far. So one bomb needs to be planted to score the first point, 2 bombs for the second point, and so on. And if the strategy marker is on the center line, it's in both table halves. So what does this add up to? It's a very dynamic strategy. You are, taking the interact action to drop these markers, but at the start of the game, there are no strategy markers anywhere. So you can take an action to plant a marker, and you can also take an action to pick up your opponent's marker. However, there's no limit on not being able to take these actions on the first turn or anything. So what you really want to be doing with plant explosives is getting those bombs out fast. Once you get down into the game, in the middle turns, taking interact actions is actually pretty costly to you. It costs an AP, and more importantly, because of the 6-inch limit, it pretty quickly becomes very difficult for you to place strategy markers in productive ways. For example, if there's no strategy markers on the board, I can place one just over the center line, barely not touching the center line, fully in your half. That's great. That marker now projects a 6-inch bubble, which includes backwards onto my table half. So if you're coming across the center line, you cannot do what I just did, cross the center line barely and then drop a marker. You have to go that full 6 inches and drop it. So there's a real advantage to being kind of the first mover, the person who can proactively get their markers down. At the same time, you also want to be careful because your opponent can pick those markers up. That not only denies you a point, it can actually get your opponent a point by giving them an extra marker to drop. So you really need to be guarding these markers once you've dropped them, or at the very least making it difficult for your opponent to pick them back up. Now remember, they have to be actually touching the marker to pick it up. They can't just be within 1 inch of it. So you can do things like drop a strategy marker wholly under your big fat 30 mil or 40 mil or 50 mil base. You can't do it with a 30 mil, but 40 or 50 millimeter base, your opponent, unless they can kill that model or move it, they can't get to that marker to pick it back up. So that's pretty useful. The other thing to note is that the total number of points you can score on this strategy is obviously 4 per person, which is 8 markers total, assuming none of them are on the center line. But they start off with 10 markers on the board, or at least in people's crews. So you start off with more markers available than you actually need for both players to cap the strategy. Now, in my experience, that doesn't mean both players are going to cap the strategy, because people are going to kill each other, models are going to lose markers, they're going to get killed at range with nobody nearby to pick them up, or models are just going to end the game with unplaced markers. Especially if you are doing a lot of killing with like Mancha Roja or somebody big like that, he can end up with a big stack of markers and he can't possibly place them all. So basically, with this strategy, what you're really looking to do is you're looking to get models that can move and drop and interact, drop a marker, or pick up another one. And you want models that are pretty brawly as well, because this is a strategy where your opponent can bring the fight to you. But as I said before, it's very dynamic. You could be choosing to play a crew that's moving very quickly, kind of playing keep away with your opponent, and be a zip crew would be good at this. And you are just basically trying to run out there and throw down as many markers on your opponent's side as possible and ignore engagements, make it hard for them to pick them back up, and police your own side of the board, picking up any markers they drop. Or you could be playing a crew that's kind of trying to really bully an area of the board, place down those markers right in the center, and then kind of dare your opponent to come pick them up. And when your opponent drops a marker, try to bully them off of it, kill the model that placed it, pick it back up yourself. So there's a few different ways to play this, and you're really going to have to react to what your opponent's doing. If your opponent is trying to play keep away, you're going to need to be able to chase them down at least a little bit to avoid them just easily scoring 4 points. So what kinds of models do you want to hire into this strategy? Well, you really want to hire, first of all, models that can move and interact, especially models that can interact, move, interact. So the classic example would be something like Vernon and Wells. I know that's a pretty divisive model, but botanists, they can interact, use onward, and then interact again. Probably the best example is Louisa Fusey. She's just the guild's absolute master of this strategy, even after her nerf. You want models that are also pretty hard to pin down. You don't want your opponent to be able to just lock down your bomb carrier. That means maybe models that are a little bit durable, models that have ways to get out of engagement, models with ways to interact while engaged. Don't Mind Me is pretty strong here because it means your opponent can't really guard their bombs. You can just waltz up and interact to take them. You also really want models that have this ability to get to places your opponent doesn't want them to be. So Leap is very, very good here. If you played during GG2, you might have thought of models in your faction that you thought of as your symbols models, like the First Mate was a classic one, models that are very good at symbols of authority. That was a strategy that really rewarded you for picking 1 or 2 models in your crew who are going to be your kind of symbols getters, and having those people do the symbols picking up and everyone else focus on scheming and killing. This strategy isn't quite like that. If you can't have just 1 or 2 models as bomb droppers. You could theoretically have 2 models with 2 bombs each, as long as they're non-minions, but that's, a pretty heavy investment, and if you lose one of those models, or they get boxed out of being able to place a marker successfully, then you're in bad shape. So you need several models that are able to pick up these bombs and place them. But with plant explosives, what you're really being rewarded for doing is you're being rewarded for playing models that can both move and interact, and move and interact, and keep doing that. You are also being rewarded as a player for being able to see what your opponent's trying to do and react to it. This is, of the strategies, probably the most reactive, the one, and by which I mean the one where the gameplay changes based minute to minute based on what the players are choosing to do with the strategy. So a few other things, models with Chatty are really strong in this. Taxing your opponent's ability to take those interact actions. Pass tokens, this is a strategy that I think both does and doesn't reward pass tokens. And I've mentioned previously that I think pass tokens are not quite as strong in this GG as they were in GG3, although, to be clear, they're still very, very, very strong. Probably too strong. On the one hand, there is, as I said, this sort of proactive element where you're rewarded for being the first person to interact and throw down your strategy markers in convenient locations. And pass tokens can sort of help with that by helping you win initiative, but the sort of classic use of pass tokens, which is delaying, making sure you get the last activation, it's not super useful for that. On the other hand, though, if you get the last activation, you can just walk up and pick up one of your opponent's bombs, and there's nothing they can do about it. You can effectively just deny them, the point. So there is some strength to pass tokens here, unless your opponent is doing something like parking Uncle Bog on top of a strategy marker, and then having him say, good luck. You can't move me. It's very hard to kill me, and you can't get to the marker while I'm still here. So I think pass tokens are still worth taking here. I think this is the second strongest strategy for pass tokens. We haven't gotten to the first strongest yet, but they're not quite as dominant as they would have been in, say, a covert operations where they were just like crazy strong. Plant explosives is a strategy that I really enjoy, really because of the dynamism of it. You don't really know how a plant explosives game is going to go until you've seen your opponent's list, and even then you might not really understand instinctively. You might have to get into the game, but there's a lot of different ways that it can go, and making sure that you know what's happening, what your opponent's planning to do. Are they planning to play keep away? Are they planning to bully the board? Are they planning to be proactive? Are they planning to be reactive? That's really going to help you. In terms of your master choice, what you really want is you want masters that are going to be, mobile. Seamus is just really strong here. Obviously, he can Secret Passage. Like, really anyone with Secret Passage is very, very strong in this strategy because you can teleport around dropping markers or picking them up. Masters that can do, that can make other models interact, like out of activation especially, very, very strong. I think Anya, too, has some play here. Because you can make other friendly models pick up those bomb markers if you save your master's activation for late. Zoraida similarly. And generally you want models that are both hard to pin down and they can interact in melee or interact after walking or pushing or charging or anything like that. If you can get those things, those pieces put together, you really have a crew that can very dynamically get out there, proactively drop bomb tokens on the first turn or two to sort of put your opponent in a bad spot, and then continue pushing them forward, dynamically reacting to where your opponent's putting them, picking up markers your opponent's dropping, things like that. In terms of schemes, when you see this strategy, just things you should think about. For example, your opponent's going to be coming deep onto your board, so take prisoner might be viable. And you can have a sense of who's going to be coming deep onto your board because you can see who's got those bomb tokens. So you can see who you want to declare for take prisoner. Schemes that are going to require you to drop a bunch of scheme markers might be tricky because your AP is already being taxed by interacting with these strategy markers. But on the other hand, it might be tough for your opponent to deny them if they're already being forced to take interact actions to pick up strategy markers. You're taxing your opponent's AP as well. So ultimately, that's kind of a judgment call. Schemes that involve killing can be very strong. You can play some kind of, I don't want to say mind games here, but you can kind of put your opponent in a tricky situation. For example, if they have let them bleed in the pool and you don't put any bomb tokens on models that cost 8 or more, now your opponent has to choose between killing your model that costs 8 or more to score let them bleed or killing your model with bomb tokens in order to get those tokens or deny them to you. You're forcing them to make difficult decisions like that. So when you are picking schemes to go with this strategy, you should think about sort of what kind of gameplay the strategy is encouraging, what types of actions your opponent wants to take anyway because of the strategy, and think what schemes are going to be going with those actions, and those are the schemes to look out for to deny, and what are some schemes that your crew can do sort of incidentally while they're also dropping strategy markers. So that's Plant Explosives. I think it's a really cool strategy. It's fun to see it return. This one is consistently rated very highly by people who have been playing Malifaux for a while. They say they really like this strategy, and we're looking forward to it coming back. And I wasn't really playing in GG0, so I didn't play with the original version of this, but I'm looking forward to playing it. I've played some games so far, and I've found it enjoyable. I think this is a pretty solid baseline that really also has a good mixture of the different things Malifaux is about. It's got some interacting, it's got some positional elements to it, it's got a bit of combat. It's a really good, I think, all-rounder scheme that doesn't really push you necessarily super hard in one direction or another. So I like it a lot, and I hope you like it too. So good luck. If you have thoughts about this strategy, particular masters or crews you like, or if you think I'm wrong about anything, please let us know in the comments. You can join our Discord. There's a link in the description where you can talk about Malifaux and the other games that we play. You can also please, subscribe to our channel. Give us a like if you really like this content. And if you really like the content, please, we have a Patreon now. We really love your patronage. We have some really cool rewards lined up for our patrons and some stuff that I can't wait to be able to talk to you guys about. There'll be a link to the Patreon in the description as well. So until next time, thanks for stopping by the Danger Planet.